What's up, Earthrockers? It's your boy Shovatar, back again. Talk more about Castlevania 64. I had a lot to say last time, but I still feel like there were some things that I left unsaid because this game is complicated. This game is long. This game is complicated, and my feelings about this game. Sorry, I had to adjust my microphone there. Oh shit, the guy's talking again. Fuck.
The province of Wallachia. In this time of peace and plenty, no one foresees the return of ancient horrors. But the old legends live, and soon the land will again be plunged into darkness. The people have returned to the path of wickedness, and the bonds that seal their evil ruler's spirit are weakening. Reinhardt Schneider, heir to the ancient Belmont clan of vampire hunters. His blood dooms him to oppose the might of Count Dracula. Wielding the holy whip of his ancestors, the young vampire killer begins his quest.
Alright. So, before I say anything else, some of you guys listening, you might hear a fan, or what sounds like a fan in the background of at least the first half of this commentary, probably the second half too. That's my air purifier. My air cleaner. Basically what it does is it sucks in tainted, poisonous air, and it spits out beautiful, clean, fresh air. You might be wondering, Shovatar, for what purpose could you possibly have such a device operating in your domicile at such a loud level that it is prominently audible on the microphone? Could you not perhaps disable the device for the duration of your locution? Well. I would like nothing more than for circumstances to be other than those that have led me to have my air purifier running at full blast for the past 12 hours. However, turns out, looks like somebody up in a country some of you might have heard of, called Canada, I guess left a stove on or something, and half the country has been burnt to a crisp. Now, you might be now wondering, Shovatar, you don't sound French-Canadian at all. You're way too cogent and logical. Well, I know that, but this is not my problem directly. I am not in the place where the fire happened, but I am nearby enough that I am suffering from the consequences of the fact that somebody, some half-frog, half-mountie up in Quebec, I guess was using ants to burn using like a magnifying glass to burn up some ants or something. I don't know what they were doing, but they set their whole county on fire, and the smoke is now all over down in the beautiful, sunny, free, beautiful U.S. of A. where I reside. And there was actually a point in time earlier today where there was no point on planet Earth with worse measurable air quality than the area in which I live. Now, that is no longer the case, of course, but I'm going to state that again. There was a period of an hour or so, maybe even a couple hours, when this place had worse air quality than such lovely locations as, say, Beijing, or Syria, or Ukraine, where there's a war happening. Or any of those such places. No. It's right down here in the beautiful Midwest of the United States of America. So sorry, everybody, if the background noise is a little bit more prominent today than usual, but more now than at any time in the past, I can truthfully say that it is not my fault. Obviously, I have it much better than the people who were actually in the place where the fire happened. But boy, oh boy, is this unpleasant to have to endure. And to make matters worse, I already get seasonal allergies, right? So like, I spent the whole day yesterday. Like, I went outside yesterday to get some like errands done, and then I came back inside and I was like, why do I feel like I'm dying? Why do I feel like I have the plague? And now these mysteries have been solved because I did not understand at the time that the air quality situation had kind of already begun yesterday and had reached a head today. So that's my situation. How are you guys doing? I should probably start talking about Castlevania 64 now that I've gotten my gripe about Quebec out of the way. Have I ever mentioned before, by the way, that I love the English language? I think everybody should speak English. Isn't French such an outmoded language to speak? What kind of person would speak French when they can speak English? Isn't that really like primitive and backwards, don't you think? Anyway, but seriously, folks, Castlevania 64. Reinhardt Schneider is dressed in his Belmont regalia, no longer looking like Reinhardt Schneider. Now he's kind of dressed more like Simon from Castlevania 64. And to be like, okay, I should actually probably be serious for a second and say, I don't actually have any problem with people from Quebec. I don't have any problem with French Canadians. I understand that these wildfires are not the result of I mean, I guess I don't really know exactly what's causing them, but lots of people in different positions of power perhaps made a mistake and were less cautious than they should have. Obviously, I neither dislike nor particularly care about Quebec. So I was being what you might call facetious earlier. I was engaged in sarcasm. Anyway, Castlevania 64. Am I ever going to talk about this game? Yes. Hard mode of Castlevania 64. This was a decision that I mostly made to showcase the two different costumes, which was a little bit weird to do. But I'm glad that I did, because hard mode, well, actually, to be totally honest with you, well, okay, hard mode in Castlevania 64 mostly kind of sucks. I'll be totally honest with you, because they did something that I usually don't, I always don't like in hard modes, which is they decided that the way to make the game harder would be to make the enemies just have more health. When you are designing a hard mode, like a hard mode for a video game, right, you got two general pathways you can go down. You got, and also, I should also say this too, it's not just Quebec, it's Ontario too that was on fire, so share the blame. All Canadians are stupid, not just the French ones. Let's never accuse me of being discriminatory in that sense. Anyway, this video can get flagged for hate speech because of my jokes about French Canadians. Anyway, fuck it. No one gives a fuck. Fuck it. Anyway, Castlevania 64, hard modes. When you're designing a hard mode, you have two paths in front of you, right? You have for a game like this, I mean, either you make the enemies hit you harder, or you make it so that you have to hit the enemies harder. Basically, you make it so that you take more damage, or you functionally deal less damage. Because if every enemy has more health, then that's equivalent to making you do less damage. I am very strongly in the camp of make the enemies do more damage. Please don't make me do less damage. That's because, first of all, I mean, these are both ways to make the game harder. Like, if you have to hit an enemy more times, then obviously, like, you have to engage in combat longer. Obviously, that's, like, more difficult. You have to play correctly for a longer span of time. But it feels much less fun in a game like this. Now, in a game like, say, an RPG, where the combat is more about, like, sustainable resource management. That sounds like a business term. Anyway, but in like a different kind of video game, in this kind of video game, I think having to do more damage to the same enemy is not as fun. because it slows down the pace of the game. And pacing in games is really important to me, because when you do the same thing for too long, it gets boring. And also, dealing a lot of damage feels better than dealing not that much damage. And if you go from a normal mode of a video game to a hard mode of a video game that that is nerfing your damage, it's going to fuck up the pacing of the game, the flow of the game, and you're going to feel weaker, which is not really not very fun. Now, I've played a lot of these Castlevania games. I've played one or two, and I've played a lot of hard modes of Castlevania games. And I think this is the first one that I've played where their solution to the difficulty was just to sort of, at base, give everything more health. Now, that being said, in Dracula 3, I'm going to say that until the fucking day I die. In Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse, this is a good example of why it's hard to fight this werewolf, by the way. So I'm in battle view right now, which is supposed to make combat easier. But because skeletons keep spawning, the game keeps getting confused about where it thinks I want to look. So like every time a new skeleton spawns, the camera like doesn't know what to do and just kind of swings around like it's drunk, and shows me like a fucking random wall instead of the werewolf that I'm trying to fight. So that's why, if you're curious why I didn't really fuck with the camera settings that much in the previous run, it's because they are temperamental at best. They are not very effective at solving the problems that the camera has. I think it's much more fun. Oh yeah, I was gonna say, in Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse, in the US version, there are some enemies that take more hits to kill than in the JP version. But that's a version difference. Enemies don't gain or lose health in Dracula 3. In Dracula 3, I'm gonna keep saying it. In Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse, between modes, as far as I know. Oh, and if you're curious about the easy mode, Castlevania 64 bewilderingly has an easy mode, which you start the game off with infinite gold. I want to say 99 hearts, or like a bunch of hearts, and then the game ends after level 5. So I don't know what the point of that is. I don't know why you would give... I guess just to practice, to get people accustomed to the game, accustomed to the controls, I guess. Anyway, I think hard modes that where you take more damage are much more fun, because they're essentially... You only have to make, like... Or like add new enemies, or like change up the combat challenges fundamentally, rather than making you just do the game again but more. Because if there are new enemies, then that is like you're playing a different kind of game, or like a different game in general. Like Castlevania 3, the differences between normal and hard mode, at least in the US version, are, I would say, substantial, to the point that Dracula's Curse hard mode almost feels like a different game in certain levels, just because of how much more brutal hard mode makes it. And that, I don't think, would be accomplished if all they did was just make it so that you have to hit a turret like 10 times instead of 5 times to kill it, you know what I mean? That would just make the game, like, not fun. And also, if enemies deal more damage to you, you just have to not... You get punished harder for mistakes, so you have to play better instead of just playing more, if that makes sense. Again, both ways of increasing the difficulty. One way I think is much better. That being said, the combat in Castlevania 64 is so, is like barely functional. So I can't exactly complain that they didn't make the combat like really brutal and punishing, because if they had, then the game may have become, like, unplayable. Because, like... And here's a perfect showcase. I talked about this in the last video. I'm going to mention it again here. So those two skeletons on motorcycles that just spawned, you start off you're forced to face the boss through the whole boss fight. So you can't see them when they spawn in, and then you can't see what they're doing when they ride past you. So this is just a really awful... That is like the classic, by the way. That's like the way that guy hits me. Is that what the game wants you to do is it wants you to jump over that club, but it wants you to jump over the club. He's taking so many hits to die, or to even like take some damage in phase. It's crazy. But you can only jump over it if you're right in front of him, which in keeping with like the camera keeping him dead center is like the game wants you to be right in front of this guy when you fight him. But the problem with that is what I already mentioned, which is that you want to be at the start of the fight. You have to be turned around looking at motorcycle skeletons. And this actually is, what the fuck is he doing? Okay, there we go. This actually is a material difference between hard mode, is that this guy will summon explosion skeletons instead of regular skeletons. Sometimes when he summons skeletons, but that actually kind of, it doesn't make a difference here because I have the fully upgraded whip, but if I had like died previously in the level, or if I didn't have a fully upgraded whip, then only summoning exploding skeletons could actually be like beneficial because they're guaranteed to die in one hit. And also, you'll notice that some of the regular skeletons that he summons are throwing bones at me, and the exploding skeletons can't do that. So, there's one that can. There was one that could that I saw earlier. I don't know if the ones that he summons can do that though. I think they just run at you and explode. I don't think they throw bones. So actually, him summoning exploding skeletons is could kind of be beneficial in certain contexts. Anyway, Forest of Silence. Long, boring level, fittingly titled. Anyway, one of the consequences of hard mode and of enemies having more health, like that boss took way more hits to go down than it like did on normal mode, is that I have to rush faster to get the fast villa that I want for that I talked about in the previous video. I'll go over it briefly again. Basically, I want to do the first 3 levels, the first 2.5 levels of the game at a certain pace such that I get to a certain room in the 3rd level of the game within a particular 3-hour window. And the basic consequences of that is that I'm going to have to play the first 2 levels basically as fast as I can if I want to make sure I get that window safely. And here I'm looking at the time, and I think I might... Oh no, I remember what I did now. Okay, so the time span that I want to get to, the time window that I'm aiming for in the 3rd level is between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. So like 3:01 a.m. to 5:59 a.m. Now the issue is that the 2 items that can change the time in this game, the sun card and the moon card, will take you to 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. respectively. So if you use a sun card, you may have to sit and wait for 21 hours. And if you use a moon card, now you have to sit and wait for 9 hours, neither of which are especially appealing. So what I'm going to do here is instead, I'm going to use a moon card on a particular timing, or at a particular point in this level, to move the clock into a position up to 6 p.m., such that I'm pretty sure that by the time I get to the spot in level 3 that I want, it'll be at the correct time. This was not necessarily in normal mode, because in normal mode I could get through the Forest of Silence so much faster, but here it looks like it's going to be necessary if I'm reading the clock correctly. Because like if I wanted to hit the timing without doing that here, I would have to clear out the castle wall and the first part of the villa in 5 hours, basically, which is not really not practical. And as you can see, these guys are taking a ton of hits, and this is another camera problem, where the fact that the camera is positioned in this god-awful angle means that you'll notice one of his fireballs kind of curved around that little structure and hit me, and then that just goes right through the fucking thing and hits me. And it's because I don't know where I am. Like, I think if I was further down towards the middle of it, maybe that wouldn't have happened, but I don't know where that is. You know? Like... And I also don't know where his fireballs are going. I don't know how the fire breath is cutting through the thing. I don't know if it's dependent on my position, and this is even worse. I mean, how could I know where I was? Right? Like, that fire breath that hit me, like, I don't know where he is. I don't know where I am. I'm fucking a tiny little speck. This is awful. This is really bad. Especially because my strat here is to run in and then bait him and then run back out again. And then sometimes he just doesn't do it, and then he breathes right through the fucking thing that he's inside. This is like a beautiful showcase of all of Castlevania 64's like half functional aspects. Yeah, here's when I use the moon card. Because this is taking forever. Normally I would do it like maybe after the boss fight, but this is taking so fucking long that I figured I should probably just do it now. So now instead of having to get all this shit done in 5 hours, I have 11 hours, which is much, much smoother. And I'll only waste time if I do it in under 9 hours, which might happen. I might have to wait a little bit when I get there, but this shit can take a long time. The fact that enemies have more health, because the thing is that in the first part of the villa, it's like I have to do part 2 of the castle wall, which has some turrets that I want to kill. Then I have to do the first part of the villa, which is going to involve fighting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Cerberuses, and then fighting a vampire, and that all can take a while. And then even if I finish all that and I still have some time left over, there are some containers in the villa that I can destroy for gems. So it's not really that big of a deal. What is? Oh, I think I just stopped there because I wanted to see what the camera was gonna do. That's funny. Does hard mode change the platforming at all in this level? No, I'm on the lookout. I want to say hard mode doesn't change anything but the enemy health in Castlevania 64. Well, actually, no. There are a few extra enemies in the clock tower, and then I'm trying to think if there's anything else. That was okay. I always was paranoid that thing was going to hit me when I climbed up on off of the ledge of the broken stairs there, but it never does. The turrets in this game are kind of well, actually, I don't know, because they'll either spit fireballs at you or they'll breathe fire at you, and whether or not they do that depends on how close you are to them. So if you don't want them to spit fireballs at you, you have to get up super close to them, but then also dodge around them enough so that the fire breath doesn't hit you. So it's a little bit awkward, but at least it's controllable. That's kind of always what I appreciate about enemies in video games, is that their patterns and their attacks are either predictable or influenceable, which is the same thing, basically. Either they do the same thing every time, or I can make them do the same thing every time. That's what I like. Because I like it when I kind of prefer challenges in games where I succeed because I make the right decision, or because I like picked the right strat, not because not through Twitch reflexes. And that's good because my Twitch reflexes are terrible. My reaction time's pretty bad. I'm much more comfortable. Oh man, look at that. I'm much more comfortable when I can just like... when I can put myself in a position where success or failure is dependent on making the right decision. Not taking the right amount of Adderall. Not that I take any Adderall. This game. He goes ha 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 ha, but the subtitles very clearly say ho 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 ho. So, that's a mistake. I hope somebody got fired for that. Is there less meat in hard mode? No, okay. See, part of the reason why I'm on the lookout for things is because Legacy of Darkness, Legacy of Darkness's hard mode is closer to Dracula's Curse hard mode, where it really does fundamentally change the game. I wouldn't say to the same extent that Dracula's Curse does, but this fucking camera. But it's definitely more than in this, and I'm curious to see like how little in this game gets changed. So you might be asking then, well, wait a minute, Showater, does that mean Legacy of Darkness is harder than Castlevania 64? Maybe. That's my answer. I'd have to think about that because they both have things going in their favor and also going against them as far as the difficulty is concerned. But I have to wait until I make Legacy of Darkness videos to talk about that. Yeah, these things, man. Reinhardt has a much better time fighting them than Carrie does. I'll say that. Wait till you fucking see what these guys do when Carrie tries to fight them. It's fucking ridiculous, honestly. I don't like the fact that Castlevania 64, by the way, brought back the whip upgrade mechanics. I don't know if I said that in the normal mode video, but I think the whip upgrade mechanic was something that died a merciful death with Rondo of Blood in 1993 and really needed to stay in the ground basically for the rest of time, because it's very unfun, and it really you what look at this. I pick battle view. What's it looking at? What's it trying to show me? Are you guys seeing this shit? I switched to battle view, which is supposed to be the view of the battle, and it's showing me the empty courtyard, not the fucking Cerberus that's right in front of me. Are you kidding me? What the fuck? Why is it doing that? What the fuck? Oh, it's midnight. That means I get to yes, this little pillar lets you jump up on top of this fountain and collect some fun items, but the pillar only becomes available at midnight. And here I've kind of done what I was afraid I was going to do, which is that I slightly overshot. I'm probably going to kill the vampire in this building with about like half an hour or like an hour to spare, but that's actually fine. Yeah, what is it right now? 1:15? Okay. It'll probably be 2 something by the time he dies, and then I'll be able to collect some gems on the way to the building, so this is actually still perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. I actually don't know what the, gnarly looking motherfucker. I actually don't know what the, move. Okay, there we go. I don't know why I was standing there. I don't know what the, conversion rate is from real world time to Castlevania 64 time. Yeah, if you ever wonder why I don't use battle view, that shit with the Cerberus should be fucking Exhibit A. Oh, what's it gonna do now? Is it gonna actually show me the guy? It kind of is. What's important about like battle view, or like the reason the camera is a problem as pertains to combat, there are 2 reasons. The first reason is obviously if you can't fucking see an enemy and you can't see what it's doing, it's harder to fight them. The second reason has to do with the game's movement, because in Castlevania 64, there are a couple of different kinds of jumps. You got jumps where you jump straight up and down. You got running jumps, which is where you run and then you jump. And then you got like little side hops and back hops. And the little like hop to the side, hop to the left or right, or hop back are really useful in combat, as you might have seen there with the vampire. But the issue is that if the camera is constantly moving, then the angles you have to move the control stick to execute those movements are constantly changing. Because if you think you're going to do a side hop, but then the camera abruptly changes, and now you're facing a different, now like you're oriented differently. What you thought was a side hop a second ago might actually be like a forward running jump, or might be like a back hop, or might not be what you want. So it's very, very tricky, and really the best thing that the battle view could do, honestly, is try to like plant you in a particular angle of view, which is kind of what it was trying to do back there. The 2 problems with that are like walls and pillars. The camera has a hard time navigating them and like dealing with their presence. And the second problem is that enemies is when you deal with enemies like the werewolf or the vampire that are just constantly fucking freaking out and jumping around and like now the camera doesn't know what to do, and it's well, it knows what to do. It constantly follows their constant spazzing out, which is the same problem in a different way. The destiny of my blood means I must destroy Dracula. Ah, yes, the legendary Schneider bloodline. I wonder if this is the only good vampire in the whole series. Like, heroic vampire? Well, okay, Alucard, yeah. Well, he's a half vampire, though. Does that count? This is a nice little scene. This is a nice little, atmospheric thing. The roses being watered with blood. It's a metaphor. Get it? It's a metaphor for her. Like a white rose watered with blood, like a delicate flower, but being sustained with. Do you get it? That's what's going on. But this camera is so weird. It's fucking. I love all those portraits on the wall. The fucking low-res portraits. I love this fucking game. I love the way this game looks. I know I just like dissected in detail why the camera is like non-functional, but I don't give a fucking shit. Oh no, he's got a cross made of cheese. I didn't get to talk about this dialogue. I love this dialogue. The fact that Vincent has a cool outfit. He's carrying a giant cross on his back, which I appreciate. But the fact that he's wearing like pink and green makes you think of fucking Shaft from Rondo of Blood / Symphony of the Night. So that's a weird illusion to make. Who is this guy? You know, this is interesting, actually. This is an interesting world-building question. Because in Simon's quest, Simon goes on a quest. And Simon goes to a bunch of different towns and visits other vampire hunter guys in those other towns. Right? So... yeah, that's my favorite. That's actually my favorite piece of dialogue in the whole game. So my question is, are there other vampire hunters besides the Belmonts? And therefore, are there other vampires? Like, this dude calls himself a vampire hunter. So that means he's killed other vampires before? This question was kind of answered for me in Portrait of Ruin with Orlok, or Olrox? The fuck's his name? Bronner. I forgot his name. Oh my god. All this French-Canadian air is clearly affecting my brain. Yeah, the villa is kind of the cutscene palace. It's kind of like where all the cutscenes happen, but the villa is like a really cool environment. It's the most like detailed of all of them. A lot of the other levels, kind of just a lot of gray walls, but the villa has a lot going on. It has nice, like, atmospheric music. It has a nice mixture of, like, opulent surroundings and horrible things happening. AKA Dracula. Oh shit, look out, he's a vampire. Yeah, they do kind of telegraph this pretty hard by having him both dressed exactly like how the vampire is dressed and standing exactly how the vampire stands before he even says anything. So, but oh well. They were working. This is 1999. They were working on a budget. Here is one of those tight confined spaces that the Castlevania 64 Wikipedia article talks about. All those jewels. Yeah. The fact that Castlevania 64's combat is so rudimentary, I mean, it has to be, because if it was any more complicated, it'd be too hard. It does kind of make it tough to find, like, natural usages for your hearts, because like one thing's as good as the other, you know what I mean? Enemies in this game are either totally stationary, or they just run right in your face. So they're either like really slow or they're really fast. So the reason a cross is good is like the cross is good is if it can hit enemies that are out of reach of your whip, right? That's kind of like the point of it. And that's only important if closing distance poses a significant risk, which it doesn't in this game because enemies don't deal that much damage, and healing items are plentiful in the world and cheap from Mr. Merchant Man, who's going to be appearing in a moment here. I keep leaning away from my microphone. I have to stop doing that. What's this guy's deal? It's like the fucking G-Man. Speaking of Half-Life. I haven't talked about Half-Life yet, but I was remembering that I already talked about Half-Life in my other video. So it's speaking of Half-Life for my internal monologue, but it's not speaking of Half-Life for you guys. I guess it doesn't really matter why there's a merchant in the castle. Although actually, like, the thing is that you could cut the merchant out of Castlevania 64 completely and it wouldn't make any real difference to the gameplay because healing items are so plentiful. It like really doesn't matter. I wonder if that guy shows up in the Castlevania TV show. Probably not. That's my guess. He's a good TV show character, though, because you could just dress him up in a regular suit. What the fuck am I talking about? The Castlevania television show is animated. It's not live action. I don't even know like what planet I'm on tonight, to be honest with you. Also, all those roast beef purchases are actually not smart because the roast beef is technically more cost effective because the chicken restores half your health for 1,500 gold. Roast beef is 2,000 gold for 80% of your health. So you get a 30% increase in health for only a 25% increased gold cost. The issue is that you will find yourself in situations in the late game, basically in the only points in the game when healing items are really going to be important, which is against the last phase of Dracula. You're likely to find yourself in situations where sitting at half health is not really very safe. So in those situations, a chicken is as good as a roast beef. And then if you eat a roast beef and you could have eaten a chicken, now you've restored half your HP for 2,000 gold instead of 1,500 gold. So technically, the chicken is cheaper, but it's more versatile because it can be used in situations where you don't want to be sitting at at less than half health. All of that would matter a lot more if the game had more of those situations, or had less gold, or had fewer healing items. Castlevania 64 feels like what it is, which is a game with half of its story missing. This Malice shit was a weird fucking idea. Oh no, it's the stone dogs from the entrance. I don't know if you noticed that they were there, but now they're back again. And they're alive. Can I ask you guys like a serious question? Like actual serious question. Have you ever played a video game with indestructible enemies and then the game was fun? Or have you ever been like, wow, I can't wait to fight those enemies that like don't die when you kill them and that chase you forever? Like, This kind of feels like sometimes I've encountered this before with video games. Oh shit, this is another instance. Okay. Yeah, this is actually another place where sitting at half health would be unsafe, because I don't really know off the top of my head how much damage Frankenstein does to you, but I'm pretty sure it's a fucking lot. I think it's half or more. Also, another reason why I should want to say that this... I'm going to shit-talk the hedge maze a little bit more. One of the reasons why the hedge maze is real bad is because there's a lot of areas in the hedge maze that just go totally unused because of the fact that you can't... Really, the only area of the hedge maze that's practical to explore is the area that's relevant to the Malice chase. And most of those areas, you don't explore them. You either go to them and then you get cornered and then you get killed, or you don't go to them and then you just finish the zone. So a good chunk of the hedge maze, including both of those big towers, because there's 2 towers in the hedge maze, which I didn't know for a long time. I thought there was just one of them, which was really fucking confusing, by the way. Oh, there he is! He did the glitch. I was wondering if that was going to happen. Yeah. Sometimes this guy phases through the door and chases me. I really couldn't tell you why. I've only ever seen one dog do it. I've never seen Frankenstein do it or a different dog. And I'm pretty sure that's because I think what must be happening is there must be because the dog will basically like charge you and try to latch onto your ankles. And that's why I keep jumping during the chase, because number 1, it's faster. Number 2, it means that if it dives through my ankles and then but I'm in midair, it can't get to me, and then it doesn't know what to do, and then it just kind of stops, and leaves me alone for a little bit. So I'm guessing what must have happened there is that it must have been going for my ankles when I hit the cutscene trigger, and then after the trigger was over, because I was still in the zone, and because those enemies are still in the zone, they're still like loaded because you can still hear them off camera. It must have finished the latch onto Reinhardt's heels attack through the cutscene. That's what makes sense to me. The villa also has a few areas that are like, or at least areas that I never go to because I don't need to. There's a storeroom. And then like a second half, and then like part of that room that I was in before with the curtains. There's nothing really there of consequence, but that's a more minor issue. I could explore that if I wanted to. The problem is that if I really wanted to explore all the other areas of the hedge maze, I can't, basically. Unless I want to fucking jump the whole way and deal with dogs nipping at my heels. Oh, he doesn't do that much damage. Okay, weird. I thought the chainsaw hit like a fucking truck, but I guess not. Oh yeah, the fucking instruction booklet lies to you, by the way. So, Reinhardt pulled out a little sword there to slash at the hound that had accosted him. I've said before in Castlevania games how lots of Castlevania protagonists have like little swords. That it might be nice to utilize them. The instruction booklet says that if you hit right on the if you hit the right yellow camera button, then it uses it. Then it uses like your short range attack. That's not actually true. I think it might work if you're vampirized. Maybe it's a thing like because when you get the vampire status effect from the vampires, go figure, you can't use your whip, you can only use your sword. So maybe it's like a thing where if you press the B button... It's been so long since I've gotten the vampire status effect, I don't even fucking remember how it works. The villa, if it wasn't for the hedge maze, the villa would be one of the best levels in the game. Even though it is like a lot of cutscenes and a lot of like... and it's not really that big. It's mostly just a lot of backtracking if you extract the hedge maze from it. I still think it's really cool and really it's the word everybody always uses when they praise this game, atmospheric. And this boss battle is kind of like a culmination of that. I think the boss battle itself is kind of awkward because of this part right here. Okay, good, I got it. I guess I must have figured out that, I don't know, like you're supposed to, when his shadow like appears on the ground like that, you're supposed to jump away from him on a certain timing, but I never figured out what the timing was. So instead I just jumped twice, and that seems to settle it. Excuse me. But I really like the lead up to this boss fight, where like the fucking creepy ass dungeon with the Bloody Tears intro playing, and like the impaled bodies. It's a nice little like, it's a nice contrast to the villa as it had appeared before, because the villa is sort of like superficially rather like superficially luxurious, but it's actually really fucked up. And then you get down here and it's like just like straight fucked up. At the same moment that you fight the monstrous vampire. So it's a metaphor. Do you get it? Well, actually, the metaphor would work better if the vampire had disguised himself with any efficacy. Instead of just showing up right at the start, and then showing up in the same clothes later and pretending to be somebody else, which is a little bit of a giveaway. It'd be basically like if Reinhardt put on a Halloween mask and tried to like give orders pretending to be Dracula. It's not really gonna work. But conceptually, that's the idea of going from the villa to the creepy dungeons. It's supposed to mimic the collapse of the vampire's facade of luxury and reveal the monster beneath. That's my interpretation anyway. I could be giving them way too much fucking credit, but I think I am. I think they just wanted a location that would serve as a logical transition point between the villa and the hedge maze, and then either the underground tunnels for Reinhardt or the waterway for Carrie. So I could be totally wrong. Oh well. Boy, how many times has that happened to you guys, huh, fellas? The spider bodies have little spider eyes. I never noticed that. It's cute as fuck. Does anything like that ever show up again? Yes, there are spider ladies in Aria of Sorrow. I just remembered. I'd forgotten for a little bit. I just remembered. Are they in anything else? No? Are they in Dawn of Sorrow? I can't remember. I blocked out all my memories of Dawn of Sorrow. I haven't retained any information about it. It's a cool idea, though, especially after they got the spears, although I think the spears make them a little bit redundant. Something that I actually somehow never talked about in my first Castlevania 64 video, but which I really gotta bring up now, is one of Castlevania 64's many big mistakes is, its infatuation with endlessly respawning enemies. Like, if you ever wonder why, like, something might spawn, and then I just jump right the fuck past it and ignore it, like this chick right, and I'm gonna fight her. Okay, but another one's gonna spawn, and I run right past it because those two spiders will just respawn infinitely there. Or at least they seem to. They either respawn infinitely or they respawn so many times that it might as well be infinite. Same thing happens in the Forest of Silence, as far as I can tell. Really not sure why they felt the need to do that. It's possible that they figured that because the camera was too drunk, I could have put that better, but you know what I mean. Because the camera was unreliable, and because that kind of hamstrung the capabilities of the combat in general, they figured they couldn't make combat very complicated or demanding, so they must have just figured, well, what if instead of making like every level have difficult combat challenges, we just kind of make the player have to do a lot of combat. Because they didn't want you just running through empty environments doing nothing, right? Because that wouldn't feel very dangerous. It wouldn't feel very much like Castlevania. But they also didn't or couldn't or wouldn't make the enemies too dangerous. So the solution they came up with, I'm guessing, was just, let's just respawn the same skeletons and the same spider ladies over and over and over again. So that way the player feels threatened and feels like they have to keep moving, and we don't have to make anything too complicated. Which, I don't know, like, I mean, I've already said that I really like this game. But I think respawning enemies kind of detract from the, well, I don't know. They do succeed in making environments feel dangerous. The caveat, though, is that they kind of discourage exploration. Like, that's kind of what the hedge maze is in its most, is like that problem in the most extreme form, when you could think of the Frankenstein and his two little dogs as enemies that don't die, or you could also think of them as enemies that have a really short respawn timer, because there's functionally no difference. They both are disabled for a brief period of time, and then they get right back up again and come after you again, which is basically the same thing as an enemy dying and then respawning. So I guess the difference is that they actually are dangerous, or at least Frankenstein is dangerous. Well, in tandem they're dangerous, because the dogs immobilize you, and then Frankenstein does really mega damage. Fuck up. God damn it. Wow. That was a fucking miracle. See, okay, that's another problem with the camera, which is that I think I was really trying to turn around there, but I think for some reason the camera decided that it wanted me to look at the ghosts instead of looking back at the track, where that yellow thing was coming from, because I knew that was coming. I knew that was going to come before the blue platform did, and I wanted to make sure that I was ready to see it. But for some reason, like, hitting the R button is supposed to center the camera behind you no matter what, but maybe it doesn't do that if the game thinks you're in combat with something. I think maybe it like locks, like moves you toward whatever you're turns you towards whatever you're locked onto. Because there's no reason, I knew that was coming, and there's no reason I would be staring at that ghost unless I was doing that like by accident. So that's another problem right there. Yeah, I don't know. It's the pitfalls of a three-dimensional environment. It's amazing, like, how many problems that causes. And I guess I've just kind of been spoiled by Legend of Zelda, because I did grow up playing like Wind Waker, and Z targeting in Wind Waker was like perfectly functional, and the camera was great because you had like the C stick if you ever needed it, and I think the control pad can also like free move the camera in I know it can in Legacy of Darkness. I don't know if it can in Castlevania 64. Because I feel like I never hit the number pad or the D-pad when I played this game. I'm just not convinced it would really help, because once you start moving, it immediately reorients the camera behind you. There are a few places in Legacy of Darkness where having the camera be sideways for a very brief period of time actually is super helpful, but I'm not sure if that would ever really help here. Like, if I was trying to, like, I don't know, like, I feel like trying to wrangle the camera around and then turn myself around in order to see that yellow thing in time before it hit me. I don't know. I think I just kind of wanted to kill the ghost to get myself to not look at it anymore, and then try to use R to turn around. Oh yeah, and it seems like the health bonuses in hard mode get like multiplied It seems like they get even more health on. Seems like enemies at night. Okay, how do I explain this? Rather than enemies at night and enemies of the day gaining health in set amounts, it seems like they gain health multiplicatively, concordantly. Hard mode also conveys a multiplicative buff to health, and it is my suspicion that these augmentations are also done multiplicatively. It seems like... Oh my god, how do I explain this? Enemies have a lot of health on hard mode, and they have a fucking lot of health on its hard mode at nighttime. That's what I'm trying to say. Oh my god. See, this is why in the cutscene with Rosa, in the villa, you have to talk to her between 3 and 6 a.m. Because 6 a.m. is sunrise on the dot in Castlevania 64. So they couldn't have a scene where you're talking to her during the daytime in that villa room. It had to be before, it had to be close to the daytime, but not literally during the daytime. No, it's because it wouldn't be any fun. I feel like Rosa's design is missing something. It's not bad, it's just kind of simplistic. And she has kind of like dead... Well, I guess she's supposed to be a vampire. I was about to say something really dumb. I was supposed to say she has dead, lifeless eyes, but she's supposed to. And also, it's a fucking N64 game, so, like, what are you gonna do? So I hit him with the sword there, but I think that's because I hit B and then B again too quickly after I hit B once. And if you do that, then the game decides that rather than... use the whip again, you should be using your sword. I want you to remember that, by the way, because that's going to be very, very important in Legacy of Darkness. So, if you're planning on marathoning this shit or something, just remember that for the future. Let's see, something happens in this room where sometimes if you go far away enough from the vampires, they'll deactivate. No, I'm not far away enough. Oh well. I don't know if I talked much about this room, but this room is actually like a big pain in the ass, and it's because of this bitch. This type of vampire that summons the bats can be a real fucking pain in the ass. It's not that bad on Reinhardt. On Carrie, it's a lot worse. Carrie is... You know, to go back to the fucking nostalgia critic, not the nostalgia critic, to go back to the Angry Video Game Nerd, because I talked about the Angry Video Game Nerd a little bit when I did my normal mode run. I'll explain why. My first exposure to this game was through the Angry Video Game Nerd. My first exposure to a lot of Castlevania games was actually... I'd heard of Castlevania prior to AVGN, I think. I wasn't really curious about like video game history for a very long time. Maybe I'd heard of it, because I don't know when that video about Castlevania came out, because well, obviously his first video ever was about Simon's Quest, but I'm talking about a series of videos he did about the Castlevania series as he experienced it. I don't know when he made that video. It must have been like 2009, maybe. Maybe it was earlier than that. Maybe I'm too far in the future. Because the reason I'm trying to think about how old I was when I saw it, because that would... It doesn't matter. My point is, None of this, shit, I fucking hit my microphone, sorry. None of this matters. What I'm saying is that, Angry Video Game Nerd played this game in the video series. Didn't like it. Totally understandable. But in the video, he does two things that don't make sense. The first thing he does is he decides to play as Carrie. And I think I know why. I think in the video he says something like, because it's like harder to target things, or it's like harder to hit things on Reinhardt. That's technically true if you want to hit one thing one time. Or if you want to hit multiple things one time. But there are situations where Carrie is really kind of not fun to play, and Reinhardt is in terms of the combat. I guess I'll wait to talk more about that until I'm playing as Carrie, but I want to talk about the other thing that the Angry Video Game Nerd did. As relates to the Castle Center, the level we are in now, which is that he stopped playing partway through it because he couldn't figure out the nitro puzzle, allegedly. Some people have pointed out, though, that if you watch the footage, because there are two places where you have to place nitro in the Castle Center. There's a big wall after the boss, but you can only, or before the boss, but you can only blow that wall up if you disable a magical seal, and you can only disable the seal by solving a puzzle in an observatory, and you can only get to the observatory by destroying the first wall. Basically what I'm saying is that you would already have had to blown up, verily, at the point upon which, if one were to endeavor to blow up the second wall, one would already have had to have blown up the first wall. Therefore, to claim not to know how to be able to blow up the first wall when evidence would demonstrate... To claim to not know how to be able to blow up the second wall when evidence would demonstrate that you have blown up the first wall does not make sense. And I don't remember... I think in the footage, the magic seal on the wall that he says he doesn't know how to blow up is gone, which would mean he must have blown up a wall already. So I don't know if he just got sick of playing the game. That's kind of my suspicion. Excuse me. Because I said in my first video that the game gets better as it goes along. I think that's kind of true. I'm trying to think if that's true for Reinhardt. I'd say it's definitely true for Carrie. For Reinhardt, yeah, it's true for Reinhardt too, I'd say. Because the early game levels... Because the Castle Center is kind of like the point where the game splits in half, in my opinion. Kind of like at the halfway point of the Castle Center, because the Castle Center is a long fucking level. And I'm playing it basically as efficiently as you possibly can, but there are ways to play it that are super inefficient. Oh, it's this little shit again. He's talking crazy. How mysterious. I hope this little kid jumps in a fucking wood chipper. You will die like wretches. You're talking to one person, you fucking idiot. Didn't they teach you proper pluralization at Crazy School? The place where you went to? See, I don't get this. If he's trying to, like, why would he blow his cover? You know, if he really wanted to kill Reinhardt, he could have just pushed one of those bottles of nitro over. Maybe maybe that would have killed him too. I guess that probably would have killed him. If you want to kill someone, you don't throw a grenade right next to them while you're in the same room with them. Is the thinking, I suppose. What do I think of the castle center? The castle center is kind of like it's kind of like the villa, but it doesn't have the villa's. I think it's a little bit too big and it goes on a little bit too long. That's kind of what gives it character. That's kind of what makes it distinct, is the fact that it feels like you're in a castle center. It feels like you're in like a big central area of a castle, but it is kind of the same thing over and over again in terms of the environment design. They do their best to change it up. Like this part of the castle is pretty distinct, but well, actually, let me think. Maybe it's just that the level. Maybe there's just too much backtracking. Like there's a little bit of backtracking in the villa, but the villa is pretty small. I also think that if you're going to make a level that's this big and the player's going to spend this much time in, you should probably make the track for it longer. I don't mind the castle center music in a vacuum, but the fact that you're in the castle center for so long means it kind of gets like burned into your brain. And it gets a little bit grating after a little bit of time. These lizard guys are interesting because these are the first enemies that kind of really organically test your understanding of the combat, because you have to hit them, then you have to wait, then you have to hit them again. And it's like, I know that might not sound super complicated, but like on the Castlevania 64 grading curve, that's like fucking crazy. It's like, whoa. I'm like fighting something. I'm not just like hitting something and then it immediately dies, which is kind of what combat is like prior to this point. I guess except for the Cerberuses, but the Cerberuses are like way too much, I think, at that point in the game. In terms of like how hard they are to fight. Especially when there's more than one of them. If you're only fighting one... Shit, I'm falling off my chair. Hang on a sec. If you're only fighting one Cerberus, it's pretty easy. Trying to fight more than one of them is not. Especially on carry. But we'll get there. What does this look like? This looks like reminds me of Hyrule Palace from the end of Twilight Princess. Kind of. There's this industrial thing going on with the castle center environment and in this game, and I think part of the conceit is that Dracula is using Dracula's castle to create like future technology. There's more of that like in the carry route, but that's always my explanation. That's kind of my headcanon explanation for the motorcycles. Hey, you know what they really should have done in this game is Dracula should have fought you on a motorcycle. I feel like if Dracula made like a vehicle that was like, it could go faster than a horse, I feel like he'd jump on that shit immediately. Well, maybe not. Maybe that's a little bit undignified. Face my true form and despair. That would have... The throne like turns into a motorcycle and then he starts like driving after you on it. That'd be a fucking phase 2. Now I'm imagining that and it's really cracking me up. He's got like that helmet on and everything. See, look at how much fucking... look at how many hits this guy's taking. This is what I'm talking about. Because the vampires, I think, have a really dramatic... I feel like their health pools are really dramatically different between daytime and nighttime. So maybe like different enemies get different buffs, but I feel like those buffs are being multiplied by whatever the hard mode buff is. That's kind of what I was trying to say earlier, very, very laboriously. So the Mandragora, is it like a thing? Is it like a real thing? Or is it like some kind of plant? Or some kind of like mythical plant? Because I know there were Mandragoras in Order of Ecclesia, and I think there were some in Harry Potter too, weren't they? Didn't they like scream? Oh, can I talk about Harry Potter on YouTube without getting in trouble? Shit. On the wizard movie. Sorry, I didn't mean to offend anybody. And there's the magic seal that I was talking about. It's the thing on the wall, not the dead cow. This big empty Colosseum is a new thing. Well, no, it's not, because there's a Colosseum in Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which, again, I said this in my first video, but I'm going to say it again. It fucking blows my mind that they followed up Symphony of the Night with this. Like, I like this game. I think this game's a lot better than people say it is, but, like, but this as a follow-up to Symphony of the Night is kind of insane, because the game is just so totally different. But hey, at the time, this was all the rage. This is what everybody wanted. I think I already talked about, like, reviews of the time. I read some fucking review from, like, some European game magazine that was, like, talking about Symphony of the Night. It's like, oi, why isn't this in 3D? Looks like it belongs on the bloody SNES, innit? And that was like the whole content of their review. Now that Castlevania 64, that's a right proper game. It's got 3Ds. Fwah. Again, I think Castlevania 64 is a good game, but, like, reading some of those reviews from the time and how, like, fixated they were on the 2D, 3D thing is really... It's really what you call a time capsule of the attitude of the era. So maybe they had to make this. Because the thing about Castlevania Symphony of the Night is that, you know, the game is legendary now, but my understanding is that at the time that it released, it was actually not a very big hit. A lot of people at the time were basically saying what I just paraphrased, which was like, why does this game look like it's from you know, the 16-bit era? This was back before that was considered to be considered to be like a benefit or a point in a game's favor the way that it is now. Nowadays, if somebody says, "Whoa," like if you make a game today and somebody says, "Whoa, this looks like it could come from the Genesis," that's like a good thing. But at the time, it was not. That's Mega Drive to any of you Europeans watching this. What have I done? I've insulted England. I've insulted France. What other European countries can I shit talk as long as I'm sitting here? None of my traffic seems to be coming from Europe, so I think I could pretty safely make fun of pretty much any country that I want. I gotta be careful though, because I can only make fun of European countries. If I go outside the Anglosphere, or if I go outside, like, the boundaries of Europe, then I can start getting in trouble. But that's just how it is. Isn't Schneider a German last name? Isn't Reinhardt a German name? Isn't Transylvania supposed to be in Eastern Europe? Ah, fuck it. So these enemies are very confusing to me because sometimes their acid spit will poison me, and then sometimes it won't, and I don't really know what why that will and won't happen. I don't know if they're doing something slightly different, like if it's colored differently, or if like the lizards themselves are sometimes different lizards. Like sometimes they're poisonous lizards, and sometimes they're not. Which, well, actually, this is an interesting question. Because I don't know if you guys know this, but the difference between poisonous and venomous. An animal is poisonous if eating it kills you, or if eating it like makes you sick. Like if there's something inside of its body that, if that's like how it gets a hazardous substance into you is through your ingestion of it. And then an animal's venomous if it can like attack you and get the poison into you like aggressively. Like, so for example, like those tree frogs, those like super vibrantly colored tree frogs where it's like they can get you high if you smell them, and then if you accidentally touch one you just drop over dead. One of those are super poisonous animals, right? But like a snake, like a rattlesnake or like a cobra or something, those are venomous because they're attacking you, and they can get that shit into you, and then they'll survive and then they'll get away and then you die. So there is a difference. But if the lizards are spewing out like their own stomach acids at you, do they have a poisonous substance in their body, or do they count as venomous? I guess I'd have to talk to a herpetologist and ask them about that, because I think there is some lizard out there that like spits at you and then like it hurts, but I don't know what you would call that. Interesting question. I bet KKek knew the answer. Also, fun fact: snakes have a limited supply of venom. They can only generate so much during their lifetime. So that's why sometimes that's why sometimes like people will get bitten by rattlesnakes, but they won't actually get the venom, because a snake, basically, if a snake is trying to scare you, sometimes they will. Sometimes snakes get so like freaked out and pissed off that they don't give a fuck anymore, and they just want you dead. But generally speaking, if a snake isn't trying to kill you and it's just trying to scare you, it will just bite you and it won't actually inject any venom with it. However, I would advise not taking that risk. If you want to fuck with a cobra or something and you're like, well, I'm pretty sure if I just piss it off but don't really make it angry, then it'll just bite me and it won't actually murder me, I would advise not fucking... Basically, as a rule of thumb, you should probably just never fuck with any animal never fuck with animals in general, but never fuck with any animal that has the ability to kill you. I think that's a basic rule of thumb to live by. I bet all my Brazilian viewers know all about that shit, right? Isn't there like fucking dangerous shit all over the rainforest? I live in America, where there's nothing dangerous here, basically. I mean, not in this part of America. There are parts of America that's fucking full of dangerous shit. We got rattlesnakes up the wazoo in the south, but... well, maybe not up the wazoo, but we got some of them. This is a nice little part. I like this. I always feel like I should put a seizure warning in this video because of this part, but it's probably fine, right? People with seizures aren't going around watching video game footage like willy-nilly. People with seizures, people who have seizures. It's very ethereal. It's that atmosphere thing that I keep talking about. Although surely an observatory should probably be in a tower, right? Not in the castle center? Whatever. Doesn't matter. Might as well ask who's using the observatory. The answer is nobody. It's just there. That's how Castlevania is. But it's a nice little moment. It's very ethereal. It's very, excuse me. Mysterious. I like the fact that the music cuts out. It really adds a lot. Quite frankly, it's a much needed break from the Castle Center music. A lot of the music in Castlevania 64 is kind of like pretty short, like in terms of like how long it takes for it to loop. But again, the issue is how long you spend in the castle center. They could have used some maybe some ambient noise to fill the gaps, because what they do in World of Warcraft, a lot of World of Warcraft music is also just like it's not that long, but the music will regularly kind of cut in and out. You can turn off the music, the music constantly looping, so it kind of cuts in and out, and then so there'll be periods of time where the music is gone and it's just replaced by ambient sounds, and that's very helpful, because you'd spend, I mean, I'm complaining about how much time you spend in the castle center. You spend way more fucking time in the Barrens or Ashenvale or fucking any WoW zone, really. I guess you could turn the sound in WoW off and then listen to something else in the background, which is what I did for a long time. But I can't do that here because I'm trying to record the game sound for my devoted YouTube audience. to enjoy. Well, I have to say, I feel like I haven't talked that much about the game during the past hour and 20 minutes, but I still feel pretty good. I feel like I've had a few things to say here and there. As long as you guys are entertained, you know what I mean? That's my highest priority. I like the trees. I like the treetops through the windows. It reminds me of Amnesia: The Dark Descent, actually. A game that I've never played, but it's doing it again. It doesn't know what I want to look at. It thinks see, why does it do that? It should be staying fixed on the lizards, but instead like it keeps on like I guess it's trying. It's just not very good at it. And it probably like doesn't know what to do when it's so sluggish. It doesn't see it, and it doesn't know what to do because now there's a wall behind me. I think that's what's tripping it up. Yeah, Amnesia: The Dark Descent, a game that I've never played, but I've watched a couple times. Oh, I'm purple. I've been poisoned, and now I'm a purple man. Fuck. And now I'm all better. That's actually the biggest benefit of Renan as a merchant, is that he can sell you those cure ampules, antidotes, because those are actually pretty hard to find. I know where to find purifying crystals, and it's easy to avoid. The purifying crystals are the anti-vampire status item, but it's way easier to avoid getting vampirized than it is to avoid getting poisoned. Because to avoid getting vampirized, sometimes vampires will like rush you and they'll get you in like a grab attack, and then if you just move the control stick enough, you'll break free of it and you won't get the status, which is not the case for poison. For poison, if you get hit by an attack that poisons you, now you're just poisoned. And I actually don't like mechanics in games that make you move the control stick a whole bunch, especially on a USB N64 controller made by some fucking company. I don't even remember where this is from. Is this from China? I think this is from China. So this thing, I mean, I don't know. I don't know where N64 controllers were manufactured originally. My point is, this thing has some structural integrity issues. Potentially. I haven't encountered any yet, but it could, to the point that there's actually a bunch of replacement control sticks already in the packaging that came with this controller. So I don't like having to move the control stick around a bunch to do anything in video games under normal circumstances, because I get concerned about the integrity of the controller. So here, my concerns are much more well-founded, and as a result, my anxiety is higher. That dude turned into dust. That's pretty cool. Look at all those drinks behind the counter. I never really noticed that before. How are you supposed to get... I guess maybe you bring a ladder over, right? Maybe like pull up a chair, maybe? These nice green chairs. Those chairs are very close to the floor. Do you see that? Reinhardt would have to like bend his knees up like to the... even with his shoulders to like put his feet on the floor if he sat in one of those things. Maybe that was the style back in like Romania. See, this room is a good example of what I talk about. I talk about how like the Castle Center tries to break things up a lot. So I guess I retract what I said earlier about too much of the Castle Center. Well, I don't know. A lot of it's kind of the same color palette, basically. I mean, levels should have a certain theme and should look a certain way in order to be cohesive. So they couldn't go bonkers. I guess I get that, but still feels like a little bit much. The Castle Center does. But they do a good job of like varying it up. Like the two different sections of this higher area are both pretty different. And is this where we take a break? This is where we take a break. In just a moment, after I save, and I'll be back instantaneously for you. Hopefully, I'll be better in the second half. Anyway, where are we now? Yes, Magical Nitro. So, Nitro run, not any different on hard mode. I should make a note of something here, which is that, as was the case with my normal mode run, this was not one, or my intent rather was not to do this in one segment. My intent was to go up to the Castle Center to the Nitro run, then make a save state prior to the Nitro run, and then if I died after that, reload it. But, actually, I never died during this run. So this run actually is, like, legitimate, like, no save state, no reload of a save state deathless. I still feel like I should mention the save state thing, though, because, like, the thing is that even if you don't actually load up the save state that you make, just the knowledge that you have a save state to reload that will take you back halfway through the game does make it easier, because it reduces a lot of the psychological pressure that you would otherwise be under for a really long no death run. So, oh right, I forgot, it actually is harder on hard mode because they add another one of these fuckers. Somehow I forgot about that, even though it's like probably the most impactful change in hard mode, aside from until you get to the clock tower, I guess. Or this is actually probably more important, because this makes yeah, this is more important. Their aim is very bad, though, which is kind of like the mitigating factor, kind of the whole thing that makes this possible. The thing about the Nitro run that's hard on Castlevania 64 is when you get to those pillars that are between the thin walkways, because the camera has to, like, swing over to point you towards the next route, which means that you basically stall there for a few seconds, because the camera is in motion, and trying to move precisely while the camera is also moving is basically impossible. So you have to, like, stand still for a bit while you wait for the camera to adjust, and that's when the fire-breathing lizard duck guys are really dangerous. So you have to basically, like, bait them before you get to that point, then get to that point, let the camera switch, and then keep moving. It's not really that it's not that hard to do, but it does have the same, like, the whole reason the Nitro run is so hard, like, everything about the Nitro run is hard, because, like, if you fuck up once, you instantly die. So all it takes is, like, taking a pathway a little bit too fast before the camera's finished moving, or, like, not baiting the fire breath correctly into your toast. Those clouds are moving fast as fuck. So I'm recording this half of the commentary on a different day than the first half. It's still hell here. There's still, like, smog in the air, but I decided that I could live. I decided that if I turned my air purifier down a notch for an hour, that I would probably I'd probably survive. So hopefully you won't be hearing it as much, if at all. Because when I listened back to the first half of the commentary, I was like, wow, that's actually loud as fuck. So I decided that, in the interests of keeping this video enjoyable at a baseline level, I would compromise. So, funny thing about this game was looking up information for it. And I think I already talked in the other video about how, like, there's lots of misinformation related to this game. There are things people say about it that are just wrong. Like, for example, in this room, there's a tip on Game FAQs saying that if you break a box full of money off to the right in the corner of the Coliseum over there, and then reload the save to zone back in, and you can go break the box again to get the money again, and you can get like $500 per go. That's wrong. That just doesn't work. If you get the money out of the box, then you can't get it again if you reload the save. I tried a million different things, a million different like where to reload from, like to save then get it, or like to I don't know, I tried a bunch of different, like, slight variations on what was recommended, but none of it worked, so that's just fucking wrong. Which is a shame, because if some kind of, like, easy infinite gold exploit like that was possible, then I actually probably would do it just to unlock the Renon fight. I don't know if I said this yet in this video, but you can fight the merchant guy, Renon, if you spend 30,000 gold. At the shop, the issue is that getting 30,000 gold in like a normal playthrough is not really it basically you basically just have to farm enemies in order to get like about 5 or 6 or 4,000 extra gold, which is not fun and not worth it. So I didn't do it, and that was like a lesson that I learned eventually when I was going through all these games was if something's not fun, just don't do it. Like don't force yourself to do it. Like if I had just taken that advice when I played Portrait of Ruin and I had just skipped the Nest of Evil, every like floor of the Nest of Evil past the agony fight, then I would have had a much better time with that game. But unfortunately I did not. Oh yeah, so I was gonna say, looking up information about this game. On GameFAQs, there's a boss guide for Castlevania 64 that came very highly rated, and there's a certain style of a video game guide that I don't think people do anymore. Maybe they do, but like a boss guide, right? You'd think a boss guide would be how to fight a boss, right? Like how to beat a boss. But the boss guide on GameFAQs is just a list of all of their attacks. Like for example, with this guy, it says he does a laser that causes an explosion, and he'll charge you, and then he'll do a laser that fires out of his mouth that just like burns on the ground. And it won't tell you anything about how to avoid these attacks. It'll just tell you what they are and that they exist, and it won't give you like patterns. It won't give you like advice on how to not get hit by them. It just says what they are, which is so amazing to me. And that was a real problem when I was trying to figure out how to fight a particular boss that only shows up in Legacy of Darkness, but I'm gonna have to wait until we get to Legacy of Darkness to talk further about that. But the other reason I bring up the Game FAQs guide is because the guide had this fight listed as like the hardest fight in the game, which I think is completely wrong. The boss is extremely simple. He's just... I mean, I guess the timing for jumping out of the way of his charge is a little bit odd, because you kind of have to charge... You have to, like, jump before he makes any visual indication that he's going to charge. You just have to jump, like, when he starts turning towards you, not once his head is down. If his head is down and you haven't jumped yet, then you're going to get hit. But the baseline strategy for the boss is, like, the same for all of his attacks, which is basically just try to get behind him. Which is not hard to do. I would say that the third phase of Dracula is about 100 times harder than this boss is, because there's just so much more going on, and getting hit by the attacks is so punishing. Like, there's nothing. This room is like completely empty except for this one enemy, and everything he does is on a set pattern. Like, I always know exactly what he's gonna do, because he goes explosion laser, charge, blue laser, charge, explosion laser, charge. You just have to remember what the last laser he did was, and you'll always know what he's doing next. So, I don't know. Maybe the guy who wrote that guide didn't, like... Because like, jumping around it makes you go faster than just running. That's kind of like the one movement tool that you have. Is like, well, you can also slide, but jumping is like the big one. Which is kind of what Dracula X and Rondo are like. Those are games where I think, well, at least Dracula X probably just jumping forward is faster than running forward, because Dracula X Richter has shitty ass movement speed. I wasn't, like, targeting his legs specifically either. I was just kind of trying to hit him. Look at how many hits this guy's taking. See, I feel like this boss should just die. Like, after... Like, once his legs are gone, he can't do anything. So, why not just end the boss fight there? I think this is supposed to be... speaking of Rondo, I think this is supposed to be, evocative of the behemoth at the start of Rondo, who's, like, cut in half and chases after you. So, I guess that's fair enough, but... That does mean there's kind of this extra part of the boss fight that probably doesn't really need to be there. Look at Richter's lobster armor. I said he dresses like Simon Belmont, but Simon Belmont's armor... What does he look like in Super Castlevania 4? I feel like he's not wearing red. I feel like he's wearing, like, brown. One of the 3 colors of Castlevania 64. Dracula's not in his tomb. He's up in his throne room. But I know what he means. Let's see if I do any better on the boss fight this time. If I'd figured it out anymore, because I really was struggling in my normal mode footage. Yeah, that attack, okay, I dodge it there, but the thing is I don't really know, like, because I feel like I've done that before, and then sometimes it hits me anyway, so I don't know what the difference is between, and then that doesn't hit me. I feel like that absolutely should have hit me, because it's right, I'm right, like, fucking in front of her. Okay, I see, it seems like I'm dodging it pretty consistently here, but yeah, that little... What happened there is something that happens a lot in the combat in Castlevania 64, which is that I wanted to jump over her little halo attack, but because the fact that she's moving around so much is constantly moving the camera around, so I was moving the control stick in such a way that I thought I would be doing a running jump over her halo attack, but instead I did like a little side hop right into it. That's kind of the... I appreciate the I appreciate the impulse to give the player more movement options, because the side hop and the back hop are both like good in combat when they can be when, like, if you execute them when you mean to execute them, then they're good, but the way that they're implemented makes it inconsistent. Look at all these fucking ventilation units. Or whatever. Why is Death such a prick? Maybe that's kind of a dumb question to ask. Yeah, like I think I said in the normal mode video, that fight kind of ends up feeling like a DPS race, which is not super fun. I think if it wasn't for... I think the only reason I decided to upload like 2 different runs per character of this was because of the alternate costumes. And I actually kind of like this costume a little bit better than Reinhardt's default costume. Well, I don't know. I think they're both I think they're adequately distinct, if that makes sense. Do it. There you go. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, Medusa heads in 3D are like an interesting idea. It creates another avenue. It creates like another way to... This is like so fucked, by the way. Can I just say, like, trying to like do this is like, this is so bad. Like, I can't see anything. What I desperately need is for the camera to just show me that guy at all times, and like show me when he's gonna do his next little charge. And this is like the bind that they put themselves in, right? Because if the camera wants to, if the camera were to stay on that enemy, and then the enemy is super mobile, then it's like zooming around all over the place. Well, now the camera is zooming around all over the place, and now you can't like tell what the fuck you're doing or where you're going. So the enemy design was not did not fit with the limitations of the camera, which again, it's kind of like it's a rock and a hard place situation where, because if you don't have like super mobile enemies, if every enemy you fight just stands fucking still, then that's pretty boring. And this is actually like a good combat thing right here. This is like when it works, when the camera is moving, but it's not moving so much that I can't like side hop to get away from the werewolf's attacks. And that was actually a good fight. I like that part a lot. Because you can kind of get into a rhythm of like attacking and then side hopping to dodge and then attacking again. I did get hit at the end because I was just I was very consistently greedy with the werewolf there, where I kept on like trying to whip him again, because the nature of combat in Castlevania 64, it's kind of like there's always inconsistencies. So sometimes I can whip the werewolf twice there if he ends up in the right place, but sometimes I can't, and it would have been safer to just stick purely to the whip and then back and then like side hop pattern. But like I just said, I was getting greedy, and it doesn't really matter. That's kind of the big that's the big unspoken caveat for all of Castlevania 64 when it comes to the combat, is that ultimately it really doesn't matter, because you're never going to die to the combat anyway, because healing items are so plentiful. I think the dual tower is probably my favorite level in the Reinhardt path. It's probably either the dual tower or the villa, because like what these levels have going for them is really kind of like the visual design and like the coloration and the atmosphere more than anything else. And I think the dual tower, like if there were like actual combat challenges in this game, if that was like possible, then this would be a really, really cool environment for that. So that's as much praise as I can give. Wait, what the fuck? Why am I here? Oh, okay. I was confused for a second. I thought I was... Alright, never mind. I saw something that I misinterpreted something. Because when I take that path on the glowing green water across like the platforms, that is really frustrating, because I basically did what I was supposed to do there, which is hit him and then jump away to reestablish distance, but because I was at this awkward angle, I couldn't tell like where exactly I was. So I thought I was jumping straight away from him, but actually I was jumping away from him at like diagonally, so I wasn't getting as much pure distance on him, so he was still able to like grab me. And that's kind of like exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about how the game's camera is not conducive to the combat as they designed it. And they really kind of shot themselves in the foot with the dual tower concept, because the fact that the ceiling is constantly closing down on you means that the camera like can't show you a proper high angle to show you what's going on. It kind of has to be that weird like flat angle that makes it a lot harder to tell where things are and where you are in relation to other things. So that was kind of like just a bonehead decision, in my opinion. Here we are in Lethal Lava Land. More like Lethal Lag Land. I don't know if I explained this in the last video, but the reason that I paused there is because there's a Medusa head that spawns there sometimes. And has a bad habit of spawning like as soon as you show up and try to jump across the pit. But I don't know what makes it spawn or not spawn. A lot of the workings of this game were a mystery to me, even to the very last moments that I spent with it. No Medusa head here either. Sometimes a Medusa head shows up here. I wonder if it's like a really specific like positioning trigger. Like you have to stand in a specific spot to get it to show up. I don't know. And sometimes they respawn. Sometimes it's not just one. There is just one. It's gonna respawn? No, okay. Oh shit, then there it respawns, and then it disappears. See, I don't understand any of this. Like, I have no idea what's going on. Like... Yeah, I don't know. Another quirk of the platforming in Castlevania 64 that I just remembered is the way that grabbing a ledge works, which is, so when you jump towards a ledge, you hold down the A button, And then if you're holding A and you get pretty close to a ledge, it'll grab onto it. And the ledge detection in Castlevania 64 is actually very generous, in my experience, which it fucking better be, considering everything. But then the way that you pull yourself up onto the ledge, in Castlevania 64 at least, is you hit up on the control stick. The reason this can become a problem is if you're jumping towards a platform and you're expecting to grab onto the ledge, you might just like keep the control stick like held up or push it up because you're expecting to climb up onto the ledge. But if you actually jump far enough to land on the actual platform, now you're like running towards the edge of the platform. And the platform is really short. That can be a really big problem. Especially because like the jumps are not like fixed. It's not like if you run and you press the A button, you're guaranteed to go a certain distance. If you pull back on the control stick in the middle of a jump, that will affect how far forward you're going. So if you so it's like you want to hold the control. Basically, if you're going far forward and you're expecting like a really far forward jump to land on a ledge and then it doesn't and it lands on the platform itself, now you're like running off the edge of the platform. So I don't know how you would fix that necessarily. And to be fair, it's not like a huge problem. It's very rare that it comes up. It's actually more... There's more things like that in the carry stage, in the carry stages. This was so lucky. Every single time I got here in the footage, like, this went so smoothly, but this can go really bad, where that is pretty dumb, too. I don't know if you saw that. Yeah, I'm whipping, like, Medusa heads down beneath the bridge, and all I want to do is hit that fucking skeleton. When you jump up and hang off of that ledge back there to try to climb up onto the thing, the blood skeleton can just, like, throw a bone at you and knock you off, and then you get caught in this, like, loop where you wait for Medusa heads to pass by so you can jump and get on the ledge again, but then by the time the Medusa heads are gone, the blood skeleton's throwing a bone at you. And it's the kind of thing that would be really helped by some kind of ability to tell like what the fuck you're looking at. Because if you could jump and like throw a cross or throw a sub-weapon up at the blood skeleton to disable it, then destroy the Medusa heads, then climb up onto the ledge, then that would be one thing. But the game just kind of doesn't really want you to do that. I think I underutilized sun cards in this run. I think at the time that I was collecting this footage, I was still paranoid that maybe the misinformation about like the bad ending gets triggered by using too many sun or moon cards. Like I think I may have still been afraid that that was true before I finally realized that that was just all total bullshit. And there's no reason not to use sun cards whenever I wanted to like make boss fights easier. And this is a boss fight that I think benefits from the use of a sun card, because I like started talking about this boss fight in the normal mode footage, and then I got sidetracked, so I was talking about like 4 different things. This fight is like, it's easy until it's not easy. It's easy if you can just keep on him, if you can keep on the Grim Reaper and keep whipping him. The issue is that is the targeting system, because you can end up auto-targeting his scythes instead of him. Which means you kind of get put in this awkward position of like constantly chasing after him. And the dumbest thing ever happened to me when I was fighting this boss, and I'm gonna wait until the boss fight actually starts so you can like help to understand how this was possible. Damn, rest in peace. I think that's exactly the same thing I said last time. Oh well. Hee 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 ha. Why do they do that? Yeah, he looks pretty pissed off. Don't make fun of the graphics, Shovitar. Okay, yeah, so what happened to me once on this boss fight is, I jumped off the edge of the arena. Because he was way high in the air and I couldn't see what I was doing, and I was just trying to, like, jump at him. And, like, I jumped off the edge. Because I think I couldn't tell how far away from the edge I was. Like, this angle in particular is, like... It's my issues with the depth perception. So... This is a pretty good opportunity to get some hits in on him if you can get the game to understand that you're trying to target him and not his scythes. Because there are times when he's easy to hit and times he's not easy to hit. Really, to be honest with you, like, the threat of jumping off of the ledge is kind of what makes me back off from him at certain points. Like, right here, that's the reason I'm not chasing after him here, because I don't want to jump off the fucking ledge. And there, I think that was another, like, movement camera issue, because I'm sure I was trying to move to the side as much as I possibly could, but because the camera was changing my direction, it was also changing, like, the angle I was moving at, and I wasn't getting as much lateral distance as I wanted, because I can't think why I wouldn't just take, like, the direct, like, perpendicular path away from him, because I knew he was queuing up that attack. Yeah, fighting this guy during the nighttime is not very smart. This fucking fish attack is so weird. I don't know why the Grim Reaper can do this. I wonder if he ever does this again. I don't think so. I've played almost every game so far in Castlevania, so there's only a couple more games for him to whip that out again. Yeah, this is like the big, like, get a bunch of free hits on him attack, because he's not summoning scythes at that point. His name is Schneider. So if he was really dangerous, if the scythes did do a lot of damage, then that would be like the way to fight him. Would be to just try to survive when the scythes are happening, and then when he's standing still doing one of his big attacks, then to rack up a bunch of damage on him. But ultimately it doesn't really matter. You can just kind of stay on him the whole time, except for when he goes to the ledge. I'd recommend backing off so that way you don't accidentally jump off like the way I did. I don't know what I'm supposed to be seeing there. I guess the clock tower. Or the clock face. Okay, now we get to the last big material difference between normal and hard mode in Castlevania 64. The first room of the clock tower has a couple of has one regular skeleton and then two blood skeletons to impede you and to harangue you on your ascent. And it's a tricky situation because this isn't like a death pit room, but this is a fall damage room. So if they knock you off at like the wrong time in the wrong place, then it can actually be a big problem. And it sort of just becomes an issue of like I remember the first time I got here thinking like, how the fuck was I ever going to do this? And the answer is just that's so funny. Yeah, if you're near a ledge and you're holding down the A button, you grab onto it, which is why like Sometimes if I ever like fall off a platform, I'll just hold on to the A button for dear life and hope that it detects a ledge grab. That's actually saved me in more than one time. Oh, look at that. That's exactly kind of what I'm talking about. I thought I was safe to start attacking him because I had baited out a bone throw, but I guess he had another one holstered and ready to go. Really, my mistake there was jumping. I don't know if I necessarily needed to. Okay, I did need to. And then he fucking hits me again. Oh my god. I don't get it. He's like wasn't fuck. Hang on. Sorry about that. I knocked something over. I was so surprised to get hit by that skeleton. I thought he was fucking ready for me to hit him, but then he just fucking hits me again. You'll also notice that I didn't take fall damage there. Because I hit the elevator and then I hit the floor. So actually, you can't really take that much fall damage from this guy. Health buffs apply to these guys too, by the way. They take more hits to be disabled than under regular circumstances, which is pretty annoying. In Legacy of Darkness, I'm pretty sure they phased these guys out entirely. I don't remember there being any blood skeletons in Legacy of Darkness. What was the game with the fucking insane blood skeletons? Oh, it was Adventure Rebirth, right? Right. I remember the first time I got to the clock tower on hard mode. After I got through that room with the fucking blood skeletons making things like twice as hard as they needed to be, I was really worried about the other two rooms. I was prepared for them to pull out like all the bullshit. But actually, that's the only room on hard mode that's different. Which I guess is merciful. I'm using up a lot of gems here. I actually do want some jewels for the Dracula fight, because I'm kind of anticipating something happening on the Dracula fight that doesn't happen on normal mode, but tends to happen on hard mode, and you'll see what it is when I get there. I guess I can just talk about it now a little bit. Basically, and I've never seen any documentation or like explanation as to why this happens, or like any record of this happening to anybody else. But sometimes, for some reason, going into the third phase of Dracula, the camera can glitch out and get stuck at an extremely unhelpful angle, and that's a problem because Phase 3 of Dracula is a boss fight that can actually like damage you pretty severely. So trying to fight that last phase of Dracula when like you can't see what you're doing and you can't really you can't see how to like get to him safely, and you'll see, and it's gonna happen, you'll see it when we get there, makes the fight a lot more difficult, and basically the way that it plays out in the gameplay is that you just get fucking hit a ton of times on Phase 3 of Dracula. You're just like constantly taking gigantic chunks of damage, so that actually does make healing items pretty important, because you need a lot of them just to tank all the hits you're going to take in that phase. I'm very surprised to see that there's half an hour left in this video file. I guess the Dracula fight has cutscenes associated with it, and then the end credits takes a while, then the cutscenes after the Dracula fight take a while. I never realized they were like 30 minutes though. That's pretty crazy. Or well, they won't be 30 minutes. It's 30 minutes in total, adding on the actual fight. So maybe more like 15. I don't know. I know games nowadays have like 6 hours of cutscenes or something, which is pretty fucking crazy. I think I saw some video that was like, it was like the new God of War game, and it was like all cutscenes, and it was like fucking 8 hours or something, and I was like, how is that even possible? Power of a modern game budget, I guess. He became two-dimensional to teleport away, just like in Paper Mario. I saw an interesting statistic the other day. It was about gaming, and I think it was something like 70% of all revenue involved in the gaming industry comes from mobile gaming. That's pretty fucking scary. I'm not really a fan of mobile games, I have to say. I think the medium is inherently limiting, and I have no personal interest in them because I don't want to like play a video game on nothing but a touchscreen. Give me a keyboard or a controller, please. I would never try to like actually play a game on a phone. Which is crazy because I think there actually is some like Castlevania phone game. I forget what it's called, but it's got some weird title. It's not listed in the mainline entries on Wikipedia. And everybody says that it sucks, so I feel pretty safe in skipping that one. How did they decide when to make them say ho 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 or ha 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 or he ha 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 he? I never noticed those little bat wings on his elbow until like my third or fourth playthrough of Legacy of Darkness, which I guess I could just say this for now. This is identical in Legacy of Darkness. This part of the game is exactly the same. Kind of. I'm pretty sure it is. I don't remember there being any differences in the fight or in the cutscene as it happens. And actually, I think this part was originally supposed to be voice acted, because fake Dracula here talks in the castle when you get to the castle wall when you pull the second lever, but here he's just talking with words, not with his voice, if that makes sense. This is so awkward. Just watching this camera like swing around trying to follow where he is. Like my jumps taking like awkward trajectories to get to him. This actually isn't that weird. He has a ton of health, by the way. I don't know if you've noticed this, but he's taking way less health than he was on normal mode, which makes me suspect that well, which I guess would make sense, because he probably has a lot of health, and then the hard mode bonus is multiplicative, so... That fucking attack is so annoying, man. Because every other attack, you can just jump and whip him in the face, and it gets cancelled, but then that one, he fucking covers his head up. It's like fucking Team Fortress 2, where, like... You can, like, emote animations can, like, block your head and stop you from getting headshot. That's too inconsistent to do, like, strategically, but it is something that can happen. That's fucking weird, too. That wasn't even, like, a real jump. That was just, like, a side hop, and I happened to, like, whip under him. I wonder if do I even need to be jumping? No, I do, because otherwise the whip will hit, like, his chest or something, and it'll, like, do that little blue hit indicator where it means you didn't actually hit him. It would probably be too hard to try to replicate like the normal Dracula fight formula of like jumping over fireballs to hit him. That would probably be too hard to implement because it would look weird for him to be like throwing fireballs. It would just be too hard, I think, because you'd have to be at like the peak of your jump to avoid them, and like you already have to spend so much time just like reorienting yourself to look at him and then find him and then get to him during this fight. They're trying to add in some kind of like precise like jumping timing is, I think, probably too much to ask. So it's good that they simplified it. Even if it does make this first phase feel a little bit underwhelming. But I guess in the logic of the story, maybe it's supposed to feel a little bit underwhelming. I kind of wonder what the Charlie Vincent fight is like. Because if you get the bad ending, this is the last... You only do this first phase of Dracula, and then before that you fight Charlie Vincent, the vampire hunter. The idea is that he got there before you, and then he like lost and got vampirized. The boss guide on Game FAQ says that fight's not very hard, so must not be that interesting. And like again, in previous videos and previous Castlevania videos that I've done where there are multiple endings, I try to showcase the multiple endings. I just couldn't do it here, man. I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't, like... I didn't want to, like, fucking take the time to, like, sit and AFK, like, outside the clock tower. Because I don't even know when it stops counting. Because... it can't be, like... it must be, like, before you get to the room that's supposed to have Charlie Vincent in it, which is that second room. But is it, like, literally right up until you open the door, or is it until you get through the third room of the clock tower, or is it like, does it stop counting when you enter the clock tower? I don't know. I have no idea. And nobody else knows. Nobody fucking knows anything about this game. Nobody can even agree on how you trigger the bad ending, so... like... and I didn't wanna bother, like sitting and going AFK for, like 30 minutes trying to find out how, like, much time I could waste before I got the bad ending to trigger, you know? Like, I just didn't want to bother. It kind of annoys me that people, like... I don't know, I guess people don't, like, care about this game that much, must be the bottom line. Because Castlevania is a beloved franchise and, like, a beloved game series, but these games are kind of, like, black sheep, or at least that's kind of how... that's the impression that I've gotten. People don't really talk about these games very much, so I guess I shouldn't be surprised that somehow nobody knows anything about them. It was just like Chronicles, like, people, like, couldn't agree on how many fucking loops there were in original mode, like... oh no. It just really annoys me. I think I'm spoiled is the bottom line, because most of the games that I've played, like... because I played World of Warcraft for a long time, and that, of course, is, like, an obsessive fan base that will, like, document and, like, data mine every little fucking nuance of everything. Or, like, I don't know, like Fire Emblem. A lot of Fire Emblem games have, like, really minute documentation of, like, every little thing about every level of every fucking game. And I think when I started playing these Castlevania games, I realized that, like, wasn't the case for everything. It's not a guarantee that someone out there has mapped, like, every single sub-weapon in the whole game and where they're available. Someone's maybe done that for, like, Castlevania 1 or maybe, like, Castlevania 3, although I couldn't find any for Castlevania 3, and I fucking tried. Maybe it's like a be the change you want to see in the world situation. Maybe I should just do that shit myself, you know what I mean? There was a fan site that I found that had some info about Bloodlines that was kind of like that, but not to the extent of, like, here's where every single, like, holy water is, or what every single, like... not that sub-weapons and Bloodlines, like, make a fucking difference at all anyway, but my point is more general. Anyway, I already talked in my normal mode video about how I'm, like, fucking up this boss fight. Basically what you're supposed to do here is listen for, like, the whoosh sound effects to figure out where he's gonna be. But that doesn't work if you're constantly swinging the camera around, because then your, like, spatial, the direction is gonna be constantly changing, so it's not gonna, like, tell you. There have been times when I've been able to whip this guy twice per attack, but I never, like... it's, like, so specific. The diameter of his weak point is so particular. Like, if you're at, like, the wrong angle relative to him, you're gonna hit his, like, his chest, or, like, his elbow, or his hand, or something. Like, it's so fucking picky about what counts as, like, hitting his head. That's exactly what I'm talking about right there. The whip, like, hit his chest before it got to his head, even though I was aiming right at his fucking head. That's, like, so frustrating. There's, like, a particular distance you have to be from him in order to do that, like, second whip, and it's so specific. Again, like, not that this fight is hard, Okay, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to just jump and whip him twice. See, this is more like a regular Dracula fight, but it's ducking instead of jumping over the fireballs. I'm surprised I'm using the cross so much. I should really be saving those usages for the phase 3. I don't know, maybe not. Yeah, this is the other strategy. If you don't want to like listen for his teleport movements, which is what you should be doing, you can just kind of like camp one of the outcroppings and hope he shows up there. Oh, I think at this point I realized that I hadn't died the whole time, and so I was like playing super cautiously. I don't think this cross is hitting him at all. I think it's just hitting the bats that he's summoning. This is why it takes half an hour to finish this game, because this fucking fight takes forever. Because number 1, I'm bad at it. Number 2, he has too much health and he's too hard to fucking hit. There we go. That's what I'm supposed to do. Okay. Usually when I play these games, these are the kind of things that I figure out before I start recording, but this game is a special case. That is so crazy. Did you see that? I hit his fucking wrist. I was aiming right at his fucking head, and the whip, like, somehow contacted his wrist. That's ridiculous. And then what the fuck happened there? What did I hit? It looks like it went, like, right through him. I'm gonna have to use another fucking sun card when I get to phase 3. The sun's gonna go down before I kill this guy. This is so frustrating. Look at that! I hit his fucking arm! And I don't know what the hell happened there. He kinda, like... The way that attack is supposed to work is that he makes one firewall to, like, hem you in, and then he summons a second fire spout to try to hit you, but there he only ended up hemming in himself. Which is not what he's supposed to do. There we go, finally. Jesus. Fucking 6 hours later. I actually do kind of want to go back and see how long it took to do that phase of the fight. Because it seemed like a long fucking time from where I'm sitting. There he falls over. It's kind of funny. I don't know, maybe I'm a sick fuck for laughing at that, but... But hey, he's not a real kid, right? Or I guess he is, but he's also actually Dracula. I don't know. I don't quite get this part, even after playing Legacy of Darkness. I really thought Legacy of Darkness was going to elaborate on that, but it never did. Yeah, I had a lot of theories that I tried testing out about what causes the camera glitch, and you're gonna see the camera glitch here. I'm sure it happens. I thought maybe it had to do with like skipping the cutscene, or not skipping the cutscene, but neither one seemed to make a difference. But it did only ever seem to happen on hard mode, and for a second, I actually wondered like if it was an intentional hard mode thing to make the fight more difficult. Which, if it was, would be the biggest dick move in the history of hard mode dick moves, including the RNG skulls and Dracula's Curse. But then I looked up a different playthrough on YouTube, and it just that guy's footage was totally normal. So you're gonna see it. You're gonna see it when the fight actually starts. Excuse me. This is a pretty cool arena for like a final phase of Dracula fight, I think. Excuse me again. Sorry. Hey look, it's what outside looks like right now. That's not true, it's not that hazy. And it's nighttime, so it's actually dark outside. This is a creative enemy design. I wonder who came up with this. It doesn't really, yeah, there it is. Yeah, as you can see, the camera is fixed in this terrible angle. I can't really see like where I am or what I'm doing. And I can't control it, like I can't get it to move around again. And yeah, for a second there I wondered if this was like intentional to make the fight like harder, but it's not. This is just a totally inexplicable glitch. I don't know if it's an emulator issue. I don't know if it's a fucking... I don't know what it is. Yeah, see there, I didn't know when to jump because I couldn't see where the fuck the shockwave was. And now I'm getting like beat up on by the fire serpents that I can't see. And now the fucking shit show begins. This fight is already like really chaotic and hectic, even when the camera is operating normally, so... And yeah, and then he fucking randomly disappears if you get too close to him. This is better, but the problem is that I'm not going to be able to stay here for very long, because he's going to start turning around again. That shockwave, I think, can do like half your health if it hits you head-on. Let's find out. Because yep. And it knocks you really far away. Again, like... If I could have backed up further and given myself more space and then, like, tried to dodge it there, then that would have been one thing, but unfortunately I can't because of this fucking ridiculous camera angle. I can't see anything that's going on. So there he has an attack that summons, like, a nuclear explosion and then damages himself. I'm going to talk more about that attack when I show you guys the carry footage, because that shit really becomes a problem when you fight this guy on carry, for some reason. See, that was actually fortunate, because there the fire serpent that I couldn't fucking see hit me before the shockwave that I couldn't fucking see hit me. And do you see how much of like an absolute clusterfuck this is? How like he's shooting shockwaves at me that I can't see, and fire serpents are coming at me that I can't see, and he's breathing fire on me that I can't get out of the way of because I'm already getting hit by the fire serpents, and there's nuclear explosions going off, and there's dinosaurs happening in my ears like constantly. So this is an extremely unpleasant boss fight, pretty much all around. And it makes it very difficult to evaluate it on its own merits because it just feels like so chaotic. And to be fair, that is kind of traditional for final phases of Dracula, is that they're supposed to be more of like a hectic DPS race than other bosses are, and it's supposed to contrast directly with Phase 1 and Phase 2. Like, that's kind of what, like, in Castlevania 1, Phase 1 of Dracula is, like, this very stringent, like, timing check that you have to do over and over again, and it's very, like, structured, and paced out, and then Phase 2 is, like, supposed to be crazy, chaotic, jumping around, monsters shooting fireballs at you. Not quite how it plays out if you go in with the holy water, of course, but that's the holy water for you. I guess the thought process was to make a boss that's like, it stands in one place and still turns and looks at you, so I guess the centipede tail accomplishes that, because I guess if he had regular legs, maybe it would be like, why isn't he moving? So he kind of ends up having like a Medusa kind of body, with like the tail and then the humanoid upper body. I suppose this environment could look a little bit more hellish. Instead, it looks kind of like a wasteland, and that, like, combined with the nuclear bombs, there's these like shades of modernity that keep creeping into this game between like the fucking motorcycles and the like metal all over Dracula's castle and like the industrial like theme air, and then like Renan seems like he's talking about World War I, and there's like nukes going off in the Dracula fight, and he's like fighting in like a nuclear wasteland. Something's happening. Something's going on here. Thematically. And the blasphemous castle sinks into the lake. Well, according to Igarashi, it ends in 1999, apparently. So everything which is ironic since this game came out in 1999. Um, so not quite, because the eternal struggle of against Dracula is the idea is that Dracula is revived by the evil in people's hearts. That's the line they keep saying. That's what Barlow says in Order of Ecclesia. I said it before, and I said it, and I'll say it again. It's a metaphor. That's what Dracula is. It's metaphorical for humanity having to overcome the evil parts of themselves. That's why vampires look like people, because they're reflective of the evil within. So the idea of an eternal struggle with Dracula is, I think, meant to reflect the eternal struggle within the human heart. Which makes see, that fucking breastplate has got to be covered in blood, and like, I know there's lizard poison on that, so she should not be pressing her face into that. There's a graphical option that I actually should have turned on for this and the Legacy of Darkness footage. It's supposed to make the text look less pixely, so I apologize for that. I didn't really notice that until here, because it's kind of like it's kind of hard to read, like the yellow text, like with the yellow hair in the way, and it's like kind of gnarly looking anyway. So sorry about that, guys. I really should have turned on that option to like kind of touch up the text, but I didn't. I kind of already gave you guys the gist of what they're talking about anyway, which is the fight against Dracula is endless, but I guess it's actually not. This really looks like, I don't know. This landscape is not terribly convincing, I have to say. It looks like they're watching over the flat Earth. It's like there's such a definitive, like, end point to the mountains. I don't know. So that's Reinhardt. The more fun of the two characters in Castlevania 64. I would say the protagonist who has a little bit more going on than Carrie does, but again, I'm gonna have to wait until I upload the Carrie footage to make more direct comparisons. You know, as far as hard modes go, this is probably one of the worst. It has all the worst characteristics of a hard mode, that being just brainless, like, increase of enemy health. Very few, like, enemy placements that materially change the game, and of those that do exist, one of them makes the fucking Nitro run harder. And the Nitro run is already the worst part of the entire game, so that should, like, there's no reason to make that any harder. You should just, like, get rid of it completely. So if you are planning on renting this game from your local Blockbuster, I would suggest not playing hard mode. You can pretty safely skip it. You can get the alternate costumes though if you want. I think I really like Reinhardt's alternate costume in C64. He's kind of dressed in lobster hide. You know what I mean? Or lobster. A carapace, I guess is what you'd call it. You don't call it a hide if it's a crustacean, you call it a carapace. I mean, obviously, like hard mode... The thing about Castlevania 64, right, is that a lot of it is like kind of fun in spite of itself. To me, and hard mode takes the parts of it that are not fun, like the boss fights with the awkward cameras, and like the Nitro run, and makes them even worse. And then the extra thing is the fucking camera glitch on Dracula Phase 3, which is like the worst bug I've ever encountered in any video game so far. Is like, it's so awful. It's like just the worst thing. It's like the worst thing that could possibly happen. And it really turns that fight into like, it's like if in the clock tower, when the camera just like stops, you like can't control the camera anymore. It's like the camera passes out in the clock tower, and then it revives during the Dracula fight and during the Castle Keep area, and then it just like spazzes out and just has like a seizure and just gives up during Phase 3 of Dracula. That's kind of what it feels like. It's like the camera just can't like function anymore. So I guess you could argue that the final boss fight is actually kind of like a dual final boss fight, like Portrait of Ruin, but instead of fighting Dracula and Death, you're fighting Dracula and the camera at the same time. But that bug has so far never shown up in Legacy of Darkness, so whatever was causing that, I guess they fixed it. And I'd love to know from anybody, and if you leave a message in the cock box, letting me know if like you've ever played this game and you've ever encountered that bug yourself, or like you have any idea what might be causing it, because I can't figure it out. Like I tried changing like a million different things to try to like see like what did or didn't trigger the bug, and it was completely opaque to me. Anyway, that's the Reinhardt playthroughs. I'm going to start uploading the Carrie playthroughs pretty soon. There's no boss rush for this game, so there's nothing to upload in between, I'm afraid. Sorry if you guys are disappointed, but I think a boss rush would be pretty boring anyway, and no way in fucking hell would I try to no-damage it. Not a fucking chance. Anyway, Carrie footage coming soon. Keep an eye out for it. Hopefully I'll be able to breathe real air by then. Keep on Earth rockin'.